It is not just the patients at Hunter hospitals who are ill. Staff are sick with worry, according to the Mayor of Cessnock. Alderman Callaghan says 5 people in the Hunter Area Health Service have had nervous breakdowns and 2 have had heart attacks since the shake-up of health services began.
I've been approached by staff who say they can't go away on Christmas holidays because Dr Smythe might be putting them off tomorrow. There is harassment, there is victimisation, and there's great pressure on Hunter Area Health Service staff to step down and to accept voluntary redundancy.
In the last 4 months, Wallsend Hospital and the Casualty Department at the Royal have closed. Residents at Curry fear their hospital will be next. Health Administrator Dr Smythe today met with the Curry Hospital Defence Committee. He assured them that Wallsend was the only hospital on his hit list. As for Marie Callaghan's information about health staff under stress...
I think it reinforces the need for everybody to settle down, stop listening to rumours, so that the stress level on the community can be reduced.
Dr Smythe says there will be no cuts to services at Curry Hospital in the foreseeable future, but Alderman Callaghan remains concerned.
This seems to be the government's tactics for closing down a hospital. They gradually shut services bit by bit, they cut back and eventually say there isn't then a need for the service and just close the hospital down.
The people of Coffs Harbour woke up to a very soggy Friday the 13th. Around 230 millimetres of rain fell during the night. That's more than 9 inches in the old scale and certainly more than the local stormwater systems could handle in one go. As a result, shops and houses across the city were inundated, leaving owners to begin the big clean-up. Carpets and ground level fittings took the most punishment, although few could compare with the local telecom exchange, which had to pump 3 metres of water out of its basement cable tunnel. One of the worst hit spots overnight was this city centre caravan park. The entire place went underwater around 3 a.m. With high tide filling Coffs Creek, the rainwater had nowhere to go, so the caravan park had to be evacuated.
There's quite a few caravans that not only went in the annex, but even up to 2 feet inside the caravans as well. Quite a mess.
Up since midnight, local emergency volunteers were kept busy throughout the day as the floodwaters continued to cause problems.
It is dropping, but the tide's starting to come back up again.
More thunderstorms have been predicted for the mid-north coast tonight, but authorities believe they're unlikely to cause further flooding. The irony of it all, though, is that despite the Black Friday deluge, the city remains in the grip of water restrictions. Ian Cameron in Coffs Harbour for NBN News. NBN News.
The sounds of crunching metal drew dozens of anxious shoppers into the car park on National Park Street, all checking to see if their vehicles were involved. Witnesses told police a car slammed into the first vehicle while reversing. It then drove into several others on an erratic path towards the street.
Like she just left, just crashing into everything and then landed on the other side of the road.
The vehicle travelled several hundred metres before skidding off the road. Police raced to the scene amid reports that the incident arose from an abortive car stealing attempt. They later interviewed the driver, a middle-aged woman who they believe may have panicked after the first collision. Police inquiries are continuing. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Built 100 years ago by the Waratah Coal Company and known as Scab Row during the fiery strikes late last century, these old cottages are part of Charlestown's heritage. But whatever history was in the 4 walls of 310 Charlestown Road was torn down just after 7 this morning. The council says this cottage was one of the few reminders of Charlestown's mining past, so the aldermen resolved to contact the Heritage Council and seek a preservation order, but their words came too late to stop this action. Acting City Planner Dick Maher went on site as soon as he heard the demolition team had moved in. He told the owner that council was waiting for the conservation order it had decided to seek 10 days ago.
And I advised him strongly to seek legal advice before continuing with the demolition work. He declined to do that and declined also to advise his machine operator to cease work.
Many of the aldermen slammed the demolition, including a disappointed Mayor, Doug Carley.
I am challenging the integrity of that action.
The owner, Philip Johnson, wouldn't be interviewed, but a spokesman for the demolishers assert council approved the building application yesterday. The council says no such application was approved for the site. Mayor Carley asserts council is now looking at a new policy to protect old buildings being considered for heritage listing.
That we seek a court order to restrain persons from affecting any buildings on their properties.
The ACTU president was at Ganninan's Georgetown factory today in an environment he's pushing for all Australian companies to adopt. Management and employees sitting together talking about the workplace. Mr Ferguson told the gathering that workplace bargaining and ideas such as multi-skilling were the surest bet for a secure job. During the Ganninan meeting, the workers repeatedly raised their concerns about the SRA considering buying 20 used locomotives from the United States instead of giving the contract to their company. It's a concern shared by Mr Ferguson as he calls for companies and governments to help reduce the 10.5% unemployment rate.
As far as I'm concerned, there is an obligation on the New South Wales government to build their requirements locally for the railway industry, be it railway lines, locomotives, carriages or whatever. Let's make sure we keep jobs in Australia for Australians.
Mr Ferguson also visited Anderson Ray and tube makers, two other success stories in workplace bargaining. And despite the questions being raised about the future of BHP's Newcastle works, the ACTU president is confident the region's industrial character is not doomed.
"12-year-old Eloise Holmes-Prowse and 11-year-old Hunter Brown met at the Abermain Music Eisteddfod in October. They have since teamed up and are turning their talent for music into dollars. Shoppers were today treated to an outdoor concert in the mall.
Everyone wants to hear Christmas songs, and so that's what we're playing. I'd say everyone's in a good Christmas mood.
This is the man who abducted and raped a 17-year-old girl. The victim has given police what they believe is a very accurate description of her attacker. The girl was walking on the highway north of Raymond Terrace at about 1 p.m. on October the 19th when a motorist stopped and offered her a lift.
On the first occasion she refused and walked on, and the driver of the vehicle then proceeded down this way another further 500 metres where he stopped. As she attempted to pass the vehicle, he forced her into the car and abducted her, taking her off towards the Swan Bay area.
The victim has told police she was forced into a black two-door four-wheel drive vehicle with two grey pinstripes along the side. The interior was also grey. When the vehicle slowed to turn onto Swan Bay Road, she made an attempt to escape, but the man grabbed her and brutally raped her. She was dumped by the road and eventually reached help. The attacker is described as about 40 years of age and at one stage said his name was Bob. He's about 180 centimetres tall, of muscular build, and was wearing a dark sleeveless t-shirt and yellow shorts. If you recognise this man, call Raymond Terrace Police or the Crime Stoppers hotline number 008 251 009, where police are waiting to take your call. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
"500 of the Hunters' 2,000 coal miner members of the Metal and Engineering Workers Union met at Curry to decide their future union representation. Fearing the worst, the MEWU brought in their local, state and national representatives, while in the other corner was Steve Crockford and Ian Murray, former Metalwork Union organisers who dumped that union for the United Mine Workers Federation.
Somebody had to bite the bullet. We've watched ourselves disintegrate around the other districts. And I believe that that was an unprincipled position to allow to unfold when you were aware of what was going to take place.
After a heated debate, the rank and file voted to investigate joining the Mine Workers Federation. Speakers claiming coal mining members should join the principal miners' union, not stay with the principal metal workers' union. For the MEWU, it was a damaging result, possibly losing members and important influence in the mining field.
Things are not looking the best. We are going to continue to service any of our members in the industry that want service, and we really should be concentrating about creating jobs for workers. It shouldn't be squabbles between unions. It's about doing the best, getting the best service to workers and making sure that we create jobs in the industry.
Since 1887, miners at Lambton Colliery have been burrowing beneath the redhead soil, making hundreds of kilometres of tunnels in pursuit of coal. 2 years after the mine began, the train tracks were laid so that the coal could be carried to Newcastle Harbour. But now, 102 years later, the steel will be struck silent. The last train left the colliery this morning. The loco waited to haul the 600-tonne load, the last of the coal to be taken from this mine, which closes next month. Gathering by the tracks, enthusiasts and 2 generations of railway men already talking as if the line had been consigned to history. Harry Wright worked the Lambton Colliery run for a quarter of a century, and he's sad to see the end of the line.
Times have changed and we've got to learn to live with it.
Driver Tony Williamson was not so sentimental, but he was glad to be on the final journey to reflect on 32 years working this 14-kilometre run.
Oh, I think back and think over the years of how that's changed, and everything's changed on the running out here.
With the simple push of a lever, the coal train trundled reluctantly into the past.
Not since the halcyon days of the early 60s, when legendary American Bob Tattersall could attract crowds of 30,000 to the Sydney Showgrounds, has the sport of speedway boasted a more legitimate world champion than Steve Kinser. Kinser is the undeniable king of sprint car racing. He's won the 90 Race World Series for 11 of its 13 years, collected more than 400 wins and pocketed $3.5 million in prize money.
I grew up around sprint cars and dirt track racing with my father, and I've been used my head enough, I think, where I've got into good race cars. That's always gave me an opportunity to learn how to run cars, and I just, I feel like my father bred something into me that made me a sort of a natural dirt track racer.
Kinser arrived in Australia a week ago for a 6-week tour and makes his debut in Newcastle on Sunday night. The 35-year-old speedster from Bloomington, Indiana, is the first American driver to win more than $1 million directly from dirt tracks. And while he's been tempted into the Indy and NASCAR circles, he seems content to be the master of his own destiny.
I'm doing real well what I'm doing. The sport seems like it's got a lot of potential, and I would have to run no matter what sport, whether it be Indy cars, the Grand National car, Winston Cup cars, or whatever. I'd have to run consistently in the top 10 to make the money I'm doing right here.
Erected in 1870, the building on what is known as Campbell's Corner was the jewel in the crown of the Campbell chain of general stores that dotted the Hunter. Time and progress stole the march on the family business, which used to offer 12 months credit to farmers waiting for payment on their wool clips. A walk-in vault bears testimony to the boom times. The building still houses retail businesses, but sits mostly vacant and in disrepair. Caretaker John Edwards looks forward to its revival.
It has to make the main street again like it used to be at one time.
Reckon the main street would really do with it?
Oh, well, it's dead if it's not.
The Shire Council agrees.
It'll be a revitalisation of the town. It's a landmark of Muswellbrook, and it's recognised by visitors and locals as a part of Muswellbrook heritage, and Council's very keen to see the plans take regard of that.
The heritage-listed building will house a supermarket, indoor shopping mall and offices. Work is expected to begin next year at a cost of about $1 million. Andrew Lobb reporting for NBN News.
Newcastle's teaching hospitals have been under review. More than 120 departments at the John Hunter, the Mater and the Royal have been scrutinised by LEK, an international consulting firm. While many of the departments were found to be on a par with the best in the country, the report has identified further cost-cutting measures which could save the area about $5 million. The report was particularly critical of the matrix management system in place at the John Hunter Hospital.
Well, the matrix management system is one of the pilot systems in a number of teaching hospitals across Australia, trying a different type of management for a large complex hospital. And the idea is to have a decentralised system.
The report says the financial controls need to be improved, particularly in relation to spending on equipment. NBN revealed last week that the John Hunter Hospital spent about $8 million on unauthorised computers and equipment.
It really was a case no one had control of that expenditure. There wasn't one person authorising the expenditure and keeping a tab on what was being spent.
Just 2 weeks ago, the state opposition claimed that the SRA was considering buying 80 used locomotives from the United States at the expense of manufacturing jobs at home. But the contract for the new diesel-electric locos will be filled in New South Wales. It's not likely, however, that the work will come to the Hunter. State Rail has today revealed it's negotiating with a consortium headed by Sydney-based Clyde Engineering with a view to signing a contract next month. Gunninan also tendered for the $500 million work to build and maintain the locos, but much to its disappointment, the Broadmeadow company has run second in the tendering race.
We're talking about a team of people here, have been working for the past 2 years on this bid, have had immense costs. Gunnanan's costs are running around $1 million on this bid. Our partner General Electric would be running at least double that.
Gunninan is midway through a contract to build 450 Tangara carriages at an eventual cost of more than $1,000 million. But a spokesman for the SRA said the fact that Gunninan already has the Tangara work had nothing to do with the company missing out on the first-ranked tenderer's position for the locos contract. The SRA's decision is not only a blow for Gunninan, which intended to employ an extra 300 people if it won the contract, but an opportunity for the Hunter to develop its manufacturing base for the international market has also been missed.
The biggest disappointment to us is our partner General Electric was going to bring into the valley state-of-the-art technology like we did on Australian National in the past 18 months. But on top of that, over the next 5 years, we would be manufacturing and exporting locomotives from this plant.
Last month, Jan Sharp rubbed some eucalyptus oil on her daughter's chest to help relieve her cold symptoms. It's safe to use it in this way. However, while she was attending to baby Brooke, her 22-month-old son, Scott, drank an unknown quantity of the oil.
He walked out to me and he'd sort of take 2 steps and fall everywhere, get up again and take another 2 steps and fall over again.
Jan took her son to Gosford Hospital where his stomach was pumped. The Director of Accident and Emergency at the hospital, Dr Greg McDonald, says 12 toddlers on the Central Coast have accidentally swallowed the substance in the last 12 months.
I think because eucalyptus oil is a commonly used first aid measure and people don't understand that it might be poisonous, and subsequently they'd leave it lying around where children can get easy access to it.
Dr McDonald says eucalyptus oil should be kept well out of the reach of children. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
From Estonia with love came presents for Annika Eesmaa, the first Rotary Exchange student to Australia from the former Soviet Union. And for her first Christmas down under, it's not just the lack of snow that Annika has had to get used to. To be even allowed to celebrate Christ's birth is still novel to the 17-year-old.
2 years ago it was illegal, but many people still celebrated it. Now it's like legal holiday.
Making Christmas celebrations legal is just one of the many changes implemented by Mikhail Gorbachev during his 7 years as president. Annika says she admires what Mr. Gorbachev has achieved, but with the Soviet Union giving way to the Commonwealth of Independent States, the student says the former president had completed his task.
I think it's maybe good to have somebody else replacing his place, his job.
That someone who's taken over the top job is Boris Yeltsin. The Hunters Russian community is hoping Mr. Yeltsin proves himself a capable leader.
Otherwise it'll be a pretty desperate situation. Our world knows very little about Mr. Yeltsin, I think, and it's one of the confusing stories.
Mrs. Lupic says with Mr. Gorbachev gone, the Russian community is now waiting to see what the future holds for what was the Soviet Union.
Independence is a buzzword type of thing, and it's very exciting to hear it. But where are we going? That's the basic question that people ask.